Hello and welcome back to Reading Past Midnight. Today we will be venturing into the world of Haruki Murakami and Norwegian wood. Before we do that though, I just want to mention that when we reach 100 subscribers, which hopefully will eventually happen, I'll be giving away this very nice volume of Hawthorne's Tales and Sketches from the Library of America. It's a used volume in extremely good condition that I picked up at a used bookstore. It is a collection of all of his short stories. It is 1,400 pages long, and again, it's in very good shape. All you need to do to enter the drawing is put something in the comments. Just say hi, make a comment on the site, just put a notation of some sort or just put a mark, and we will be drawing at random from all those who have made some sort of a notation in the comments at the point where we reach 100 subscribers. As of this recording, I believe we have 17, so we have a little bit of a ways to go. So today I want to talk about Haruki Murakami, who is a fairly popular Japanese novelist, and a lot of his later work delves very deeply into magical realism. Magical realism is an interesting term. It refers to a novel which is basically set in what we might call the real world, but strange things happen. It's not a fantasy world like partaking of sword play. It's not a sci-fi world where we're in space or any type of science fiction tropes come into play. But weird things happen in what otherwise might seem to be a real world. Those of you who have read magical realism, maybe the works of David Mitchell, something like that, feel free to dive into the deep end of Murakami's work, maybe with 1Q84, the Wind Up Bird Chronicles. You'll feel right at home with any of his later novels where there's lots of magical realism, or even just a little bit here or there. So I was thinking about Haruki Murakami the other day, and I've read several of his novels, and I thought, where would be a good entry point for the average reader who has not read any kind of magical realism? And I decided to go with Norwegian Wood. It's probably the first novel where he became very popular. It's kind of a campus love story type novel. The characters, most of the characters are college age, and there's one character who isn't. The beginning of the story starts right before the characters are going off to college. Toru Watanabe is the main character. We are seeing what is happening through his perspective. With Norwegian Wood, Toru Watanabe, the main character through whose eyes we see the story unfolding, is caught up in a series of love triangles. Throughout the novel, there are constant musical references. Norwegian Wood is a song by the Beatles. I would suggest that before you start reading the book, if you're not familiar with the song, go ahead and play it. You'll find it on any streaming service. And other songs of the Beatles come up. The story takes place in the late 1960s. A lot of popular music of the time comes up in the story, and it's the kind of novel that you could make a playlist to go along with it to help create the mood that Murakami is evoking. You have young people who are listening to these songs as things move along, and it can kind of help put you in the mood of what they're feeling. Make a playlist from the songs as they come up. And go ahead and feel free to listen to it at a time when you're cooking or doing something else around the house, but not reading the book, and it'll help keep you in the mood of the story as it flows through. Toru Watanabe is looking back from period of the 80s, late 80s, and remembering what happened to him in 1969, 1970, in that time period. He's getting on an airplane, and he says, once the plane was on the ground, soft music began to flow from the ceiling speakers, a sweet orchestral cover version of the Beatles' Norwegian Wood. The melody never failed to send a shudder through me, but this time it hit me harder than ever. I bent forward in my seat, face and hands, to keep my skull from splitting open. Before long, one of the German stewardesses approached and asked in English if I were sick. No, I said, just dizzy. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Thanks. In fact, he had memories flooding from his past. The song triggered a host of emotion that he had felt that he left behind. I think music has this effect on a lot of people, those of us that are at a later point in life. Very often can hear a song that was important to us when we were in our late teens, early 20s, and it'll trigger memories of happier times, of sadder times. And Murakami uses music in that sense throughout the novel. And here it triggers the beginning of what Watanabe is going to tell us. 18 years have gone by, and I still can bring back every detail of the day in the meadow, washed clean of summer's dust by days of gentle rain. The mountains wore a deep, brilliant green. The October breeze set white fronds of head-tall grasses swaying. One long streak of cloud hung pasted across the dome of frozen blue. It almost hurt to look at that far-off sky. A puff of wind swept across the meadow and through her hair before it slipped into the woods to rustle branches and send back snatches of distant barking, a hazy sound that seemed to reach us from the doorway to another world. We heard no other sounds. We met no other people. We saw only two bright red birds leap, startled, from the center of the meadow and dart into the woods as we ambled along. Naoko spoke to me of wells. Wells is an image that comes up in some of his other work. I don't know if this is the first time he uses that imagery, but it comes up. I didn't give a damn about the scenery that day. I was thinking about myself. I was thinking about the beautiful girl walking next to me. I was thinking about the two of us together, and then about myself again. It was the age, that time of life when every sight, every feeling, every thought came back like a boomerang to me. And worse, I was in love. Love with complications. Scenery was the last thing on my mind. This idea of selfishness and selfishness in love and in who we are at that age, who most of us tend to be in those late high school, early college years before we have really grown to empathize with others and feel maybe what others feel or care truly about what other people feel beyond our own selfish existence. The growing beyond this selfishness is really the story of Toru Watanabe at this time. He's a very typical young man who's in love, and the loves of his life at this point are unusual. He can recognize the selfishness of some of the other characters in the novel, but he doesn't see it in himself, and he's kind of a jerk at this point in his life. I know I was. Many of you might look back to when you were at that age and realize, yeah, maybe I was a jerk too. Some of you may not have been. But that's where Watanabe is. He and Naoko wander around the field looking for a supposed well that might be here, might be there. Naoko says to him, "Tell me, Toru," she said, "do you love me?" "You know I do," I answered. "Will you do me 2 favors?" "You may have up to 3 wishes, madame." Naoko smiled and shook her head. "No, 2 will be enough. 1 is for you to realize how grateful I am that you came to see me here. I hope you'll understand how happy you've made me. I know it's going to save me if anything will. I may not show it, but it's true." "I'll come to see you again," I said. "And what is the other wish?" "I want you to always remember me. Will you remember that I existed and that I stood next to you here like this?" "Always," I said. "I'll always remember." She walks away. "Come over here," I called back to her. "The well might be around here somewhere." Naoko stopped and smiled and took my arm. We walked the rest of the way side by side. "Do you really promise never to forget me?" she asked in a near whisper. "I'll never forget you," I said. "I could never forget you." Even so, my memory has grown increasingly distant, and I have already forgotten any number of things. Writing from memory like this, I often feel a pang of dread. What if I've forgotten the most important thing? What if somewhere inside me there is a dark limbo where all the truly important memories are heaped and slowly turning into mud? Now, though, I realize that all I can place in the imperfect vessel of writing are imperfect memories, imperfect thoughts. The more the memories of Naoko inside me fade, the more deeply I am able to understand her. I know, too, why she asked me not to forget her. Naoko herself knew, of course. She knew that my memories of her would fade, which is precisely why she begged me never to forget her, to remember that she had existed. The thought fills me with an almost unbearable sorrow, because Naoko never loved me. Toru, Naoki, and Kazuki made up a triangle. It was a love triangle, but it wasn't. Naoki and Kazuki were in love. Toru and Kazuki were best friends. And Toru was in love with Naoki, but he kept that to himself. Towards the end of high school, Kazuki commits suicide. This fractured triangle is one of the driving forces of the novel. Toru visits Kazuki in a hospital for those with mental illness. And he visits her because he is in love with her, and he continues to be in love with her. She has a roommate there with whom he develops a friendship, and she becomes a kind of go-between and helps their relationship along. And this relationship becomes one part of his life. Outside of his visiting her, he has his college experience because he has gone to college and he has friends and roommates there. And at a given point, he runs across a young woman named Midori. And Midori is a very outgoing, highly energetic young woman. And she kind of latches on to him as a friend. She has a boyfriend, but sees something in Toru that she likes, and they become friends. Toru has a friend Nagasawa, who is a very good-looking and outgoing young man. And he has befriended Toru, and whenever he goes out, he has no problem hooking up with girls. And he very often takes Toru along, who gets to pick up whatever leftovers, let's say. Not quite the right word, but the ones that Nagasawa decides not to spend the night with. And that way, Toru has a very active love life, but he doesn't have to make a commitment to anybody because he's in love with Naoko, with whom he cannot have a sexual relationship because of where she is, and both emotionally and physically. But doesn't have to make a commitment because he feels that he is emotionally committed to Naoko. However, Nagasawa has a girlfriend who is totally committed to him, Hatsumi, and Hatsumi tolerates his lifestyle because she's in love with him and is kind of hopeful that one day he will give it up, even though he has made plain that he has no intention of ever marrying anyone, of ever leading any kind of sedentary lifestyle, that this is what he plans on being like for the rest of his life. So in one sense, he is planning to be kind of the epitome of the selfish 21-year-old for his entire life. And yet she still loves him. Toru feels very badly for her because his friend treats her so badly, but yet she is willing to put up with it. And eventually, at the end of the novel, she does go off and have family on her own, but she is unhappy in her life. And at the very end, it's very predictable at that point that she is going to commit suicide, because the triangles that Toru finds himself in end that way. It's a pattern that has made itself clear in the novel. Then we have Midori. Slowly, Midori's feelings for Toru become more than a friendship. This is a point where Midori tells Toru about her feelings for him versus her feelings towards her boyfriend. She was mad at Toru for leaving her alone and not communicating with her over a period of time. That's why I was so mad at you. I wanted to give you a good kick in the pants. I mean, we hadn't seen each other that whole time, and you were so spaced out thinking about this other girl, you didn't even look at me. How could I not get mad at you? But aside from all that, I had been feeling for a long time that it would be better for me if I kept away from you for a while to get things clear in my head. What kind of things? Our relationship, of course. It was getting to the point where I enjoyed being with you way better than I enjoyed being with him. I mean, don't you think there's something weird about that and difficult? Of course I still like him. He's a little self-centered and narrow-minded, kind of like a fascist, but he's got a lot of good points, and he's the first guy I ever got serious about it. But you, well, you're special to me. When I'm with you, I feel something is just right. I believe in you. I like you. I don't want to let you go. I was getting more and more confused, so I went to him and asked him what I should do. He told me I should stop seeing you. He said if I was going to see you, I should break up with him. So what did we do? I broke up with him, just like that. Midori put a Marlboro in her mouth, shielded it with her hand as she lit up, and inhaled. Why? Why? She screamed. Are you crazy? You know the English subjunctive? You understand trigonometry? You can read Marx? And you don't know the answer to something as simple as that? Why do you even have to ask? Why do you have to make a girl say something like that? I like you more than I like him. That's all. I wish I had fallen in love with somebody a little more handsome, of course, but I didn't. I fell in love with you. Here we see that Toru is not quite astute enough to understand that this girl that he's been spending all of this time with is in love with him. He's kind of oblivious of it because he's so caught up in himself and his feeling and confusion around Naoko. So this is the third triangle. Of course, you have the first triangle, second triangle. You have to have a third triangle because there's 3 pieces. There's an almost mathematical precision here to Murakami's story. The first triangle ends with a suicide. The third triangle ends with a suicide. The second triangle, it's clear from the very beginning of the novel, is going to end with a suicide. Naoko does finally kill herself. She doesn't get out of the asylum or hospital that she's living in. But like a Greek tragedy, you kind of know these pieces. You know where the end is. And it's not about the ending. It's about how you get there. In Norwegian Wood, Murakami is a mature novelist who carries us along on the narrative. It's clear from the beginning that Naoko is going to kill herself. We know this from the beginning. Once we meet some of the other characters, we kind of know who is going to end up where at the end. We know that Midori is going to fall in love with Toru, and we know that somehow they're going to end up together. This is a love story of young people. And despite all the tragedy around it, there's going to be a happy ending of sorts. It's the story that carries us along. It's the details. It's the development of the personalities and the stories that the characters tell us about themselves and how we become attached to each of the characters. And Murakami draws us in as a true master in Norwegian wood. It's average length book, 386 pages. Very compelling read. I highly recommend this book. Anyone that's interested in Japanese literature, or is interested in starting out with Murakami, or if you've read a bunch of Murakami and haven't read Norwegian Wood yet, I suggest you go pick it up and read it. Very powerful story. Again, I'm Ron Rutstein here with Reading Past Midnight. Thank you for joining us once again. Please hit the like and subscribe. Remember, once we get to 100 subscribers, I will be giving away this copy of Hawthorne's Tales and Sketches. All you have to do to enter is put some sort of comment down below. And we'll be doing this with every video until we reach 100 subscribers. So click on subscribe, click on a comment below, throw yourself in, and good luck and good reading. Thank you very much.